joining us for the Rebel Grad Slam Tips and Tricks Workshop. Joining us today are Dr. Tony Petty, Associate Professor in Hospitality, Kendra McLaughlin, doctoral student, and last year's first place RGS winner, and Andrew Ortiz, another doctoral student and last year's second place RGS winner. They're going to share with us strategies for preparing to present your research at the Rebel Grad Slam. But before I hand it over to them to start taking questions, we just wanted to provide you all with a little bit of an overview of the event for those of you that are participating for the first time. So I'll go ahead and share a quick video with you all.
Rebel Grad Slam is more than a competition. It's an opportunity to step out of your comfort zone, refine your elevator speech, gain confidence in public speaking, and share your research with the world.
Rebel Grad Slam is a fast-paced research rumble created to showcase the innovative and impactful scholarship and creative activity of UNLV graduate students. The idea is to explain what you study, why you study it, and most importantly, why it matters, using only one PowerPoint slide and in less than 3 minutes.
It's an art when you can tell somebody that you are interested in a specific research project and why you care about it and why they should care about it.
And you want to convey it in a way that people can understand, because sharing our research can positively impact the community.
I talk about my research to anyone who will listen, and that is something that I enjoy because it forces me to reconsider what my positions are and justifying why it is that what I do is important.
Registration closes soon. Sign up now and show the world why your research matters.
So what is Rebel Grad Slam? Well, the idea is to explain who you are, what you study, why you study it, what your research question is, and how you're analyzing it, and most importantly, why it matters to folks outside your field. And you only have one PowerPoint slide and less than 3 minutes to explain all of this. So why do we do this? Well, we believe that this is an opportunity for graduate students to showcase their research and their scholarship in an engaging way. It's a very fast-paced research rumble that highlights the innovative and impactful work that's being done by UNLV graduate students. And so how can you participate? You can register to participate by October 14th using this link, which I will share with everyone here today. And then after you register, you're going to submit the authorized Rebel Grad Slam PowerPoint to Grad Rebel by October 18th. And lastly, we suggest that you visit our Rebel Grad Slam website to check out resources. You can hear from past participants and watch videos of our past winners over the years. I wanted to share with you all the dates. Our preliminary rounds are going to be Monday, October 25th, Tuesday, October 26th, and Wednesday, October 27th. You're only going to participate in one of these rounds, but we have several options for you just so I can align with your schedule. The preliminary rounds are going to be via WebEx, just like last year. Once you fill out your registration form, you'll see that you'll have the option to choose different slots. Tell us your preferences, which dates you absolutely cannot attend, so that way when we're creating our schedule, we take all of that into account, and then let you know which slot that you will be participating in. If you make it past the preliminary rounds, the semifinals will be on Monday, November 1st. There are 3 options here again. They are going to be via WebEx as well. And then lastly, if you make it past semifinals, you will go on to the finals round, which will be in person at the Philip Jacob Theater in the Student Union. So that's going to be on November 2nd at 4 p.m. And then there is going to be a reception afterwards to celebrate the event. And then I also wanted to highlight our prizes. So when you're participating in the preliminary rounds, the first place wins $200, second place wins $150, and third place wins $100. And this is first, second, and third place in each session. So every single session will be able to win any of these prizes. And then semifinals, first place wins 200, second place wins 150, and third place wins 100. So if you placed in the preliminary rounds and you won a prize, and then you also place in semifinals, you'll win another prize. And then finals round, first place wins $1,000, second place wins $750, and third place wins $500. And typically in the past, the first place winner has also gone on to compete in a national competition as well. So I'll let you all know the details on that once we get more information. And lastly, if you have any other questions, you can check out the website, or you can email us, or email, or give me a call. So I just wanted to provide you all with some context about the event before we go ahead and go into the panel. So I will now stop sharing. Up for questions. So before we go ahead and open up for questions, I'm going to hand it over to our panel just to introduce themselves to us. So I'll go ahead and start with Dr. Tony Rapetti.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Dr. Tony Rapetti. I am an associate professor in the College of Hospitality. I have been giving this panel for, we think it's been at least 3 years, maybe up to 5. We don't know, can't remember. I have been judging, though, for at least 4 or 5 years. So I've sort of seen the progression. I think I might have judged the very first year we brought it on.
Like 7 years ago.
Because I think I had a lull in there. So I think you guys will really enjoy the content. It's different than what you do normally when you present your research, but I think you'll find that it's a very beneficial process to be involved with.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to Andrew next.
Hello, good morning. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question really quick?
Just asking you all to introduce yourselves.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Ortiz. I am a graduate student. I'm currently studying my 4th year. I'm doing my PhD in neuroscience, and I'm in the Department of Brain Health.
Thank you, Andrew. And
Thank you.
Lastly, our last panelist, Kendra.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, hello, my name is Kendra McLaughlin, and I am also a 4th year PhD student, and right now I'm trying to get my PhD in neuroscience. It's nice to see you all.
Thank you so much. So as our audience is thinking of questions and things they would like to ask our panel, we'll go ahead and open it up. So graduate level research can be complex and layered. As a result, researchers often find it difficult to edit aspects of their research they find imperative to the bigger picture. How did you decide what information to prioritize and share? And I'll open it up to either Andrew or Kendra to get us started.
I can go first, Kendra. So I think the most important thing is that you want to make sure that the information is in layman's terms and that people can relate to it. I know for each of our fields, there's a lot of, we use very quote unquote common terminology that's specific to our fields, but I think it's important to make sure that that information can be translated to the general public. So I would suggest like not use, or I cut back on very like sophisticated or I guess specific terminology, and I use layman's terms.
Yeah, I completely agree with Andrew, and I also would say it's important to think about what the major story is that you're trying to tell. Would this be something that you could tell your brother or your mom? Would they understand, and would they want to keep listening to you, essentially? So if you can think of what is that one piece of data that I know anyone can understand and I can do my best to explain it, and then use your time like wisely that way instead of trying to fit all of the details of all of your research, because all of it's probably really, really important to you. But if your grandma or your mom can understand one important graph, then I feel like that goes a lot farther.
Yeah, I agree with Kendra. I think it's important to highlight real life implications, especially in my opinion, like towards the end, because a lot of people, the ending is what people tend to remember. So I think, or the beginning, but I would suggest the end. So I think it's important to highlight those real life implications of your research towards the end.
Do you want to add anything? No, I agree. I think they're both smack on. As a prior judge, those are the things that we look for. Your judges are going to be in all different areas, so they're not going to be an expert in the area that you're presenting in. So using language that everyone can understand, and the so what's really important. So start out with the why are you doing it, and then end with the why is it important. So grab them at the beginning, and then grab them at the end as their last thought before they go on to the next presenter. So I think they were spot on that one.
Thank you. So as we were just talking, you have to decide which parts to actually include in your talk. So, and you only have 3 minutes to do so. What kind of strategies did you implement to get your time down to 3 minutes?
I can go first on this one. Yeah, that's a really great question as well. I think that once you figure out what your story is, whatever graph or whatever piece of data you think tells your story the best, you can kind of start to frame almost like something that you can rehearse over time. You can be able to bracket how quickly or how slowly you can say what you need to say. That way you're not going up to 2 minutes and 59 seconds, but you have a little bit of wiggle room where you're not speaking too fast. I think that ultimately practicing and that repetition, you'll get more and more confident and comfortable with your time. And I used to do like a little thing where I would set like a timer and then I wouldn't pay attention to it and I would just do it normally and see where I ended up. And I did that enough times where I had it down like pretty pat.
Yeah, I would 100% agree that I definitely, for me personally, practice a lot, and I did have a timer, just because, as you guys know, the rules are very strict. If you go over 1 second, you're going to get disqualified. So I think it's very important to give yourself maybe like at least 5 seconds of that downtime, just in case you do mess up. At least you have those extra seconds. But yeah, I completely agree with Kendra. I think it's just practice, 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 and just recording yourself and making sure that you can. You don't go over the time limit.
Thank you. So this next question is for Tony, and kind of from the perspective of a judge. What, in your opinion, are some elements that are necessary for a clear presentation?
So, I mean, you want to start, again, I mentioned it earlier, you want to start with the so what. You want to grab your audience pretty quickly. And then you want to be engaging. So that means eye contact with the audience. You want to make sure you know your stuff. So Kendra and Andrew both said, they did a lot of practice. So that way they don't even need, the slide's not there for them. The slide's there for the audience. So they know their stuff and they're looking at the audience and engaging with the audience. They're not engaging with the slide. And I mean, they might use it to say, you can see here we have, and it might be a graph or a result or something. That's okay, but you want to, you want to engage with the audience, not the slide. And then again, you want to end with the so what? Why did I just do all this research? It's important. And again, I think you mentioned it earlier, the lingo. You can lose your audience if they don't know what you're talking about. And sometimes, especially in the hard sciences, there may not be another word you can use that layman would know. And so you sometimes have to use the terms that are very specific. That's okay, but just make sure to explain them. If you had to explain to your grandmother what you were studying, right, for them to be able to understand, or somebody not in your field, because if you use too much of that lingo, you will lose the audience, and those 3 minutes, they're not even going to know your so what, because they're caught up in I don't even know what you're talking about, let alone engaging in it. The big thing for me is the so what. What are you getting out of it? And I think it's important. I don't know how many on the call. This does not have to be completed research. So it can be research in progress. That's just as important. So don't feel like, oh, I don't have a results section. That's where your so what becomes even more important. Why am I studying this? What's it important? What's it going to bring to the field when I do get my results?
And kind of a follow-up question to that, what do you think is the biggest challenge that contestants have?
So what I see a lot is two things: nerves. So presenting in that under the 3 minutes, just it's never that they don't know their stuff. It's that they don't spend a lot of time talking about their research in a public forum, at least in that time frame. I also think that a lot of you guys study what you study because it's important to you, but we don't make your dissertation a 3-minute presentation. So there's a lot you do that's really important that is not in your 3-minute slam. And that's really hard for you to look at it and go, well, how can I pick the most important? It's all important, hence why I'm doing my research. So it might help you to chat with somebody who's not in the field and say, look, these are the main things I study. Which do you think would be most interesting to you? Don't feel like you have to talk about your entire dissertation or your entire research project. It might be a piece of it. And, you know, I think that's just don't try to put too much in there. Don't try to give everybody everything you've done in 3 minutes.
Thank you. Did you, Andrew or Kendra, did you practice with anyone? And how was that helpful to you all?
Yeah, I personally, I practice with my little brother. He's in middle school, so I think that's probably an ideal person to practice with because I feel like it's very important that someone, for example, like a middle school kid, should be able to understand the concept of your research. And I feel like if you can get it down to that point, it's very beneficial for the Rebel Grand Slam.
Yeah, I definitely practiced with a couple of people, myself included. So like a family member, I practiced with a couple of members in my lab. And then I also recorded myself to see if there was any like things that I did when I talked, if I talked too much with my hands, things that I would critique myself on. And I felt like those 3 different levels of practicing helped in various ways. So doing it with someone in your lab, you'll be able to tighten up areas that you might need help with. And then doing something with your parents or your siblings, it helps you see when you're using too much jargon or where you can simplify or streamline things. So all 3 of those were helpful for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I also recorded myself too and listened back to see if there's, if I was talking too low or if there were some words I can switch out or the flow of the entire what's it called? Script and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree with Kendra. She said it really well.
We got another question in the chat. How did you overcome nerves while presenting to a large audience?
For me personally, I just like when you practice a lot, I just got very confident in it, and I was confident in myself. Like, okay, I'm gonna go into this with confidence, and for me personally, that worked for me. But I know everyone's has different tactics and stuff how to get rid of nerves.
For sure. I definitely I still get nervous and I love speaking to people and being able to talk about my research is something that excites me. So oftentimes I try to turn that anxious feeling into more of something exciting. And I also like convince myself like you've taken this long to work on whatever project this is. No one in the room knows as much as you do about this and go in with that type of confidence and it usually just works out.
An anonymous question, Dr. Ripetti. It says here, thank you for clarification that you don't have to be presenting completed research. However, is there a time that seems to work best in the process?
So I've seen all kinds. I've seen the ones that are completed, obviously, and then I've seen ones that are just about ready to go to sort of starting the process. So you need to be far enough along that you know that your question is worth researching. So that it's important. But I also think it's important. This is where, so in my field, for some reason, we don't get a ton of hospitality students that participate in this. And I tell my students, my graduate students, that you can even do projects you're doing for your class in this. So it doesn't have to, because all of our grad programs, our classes are research-based. So for instance, I teach a class that they do a market study on. Now, it's research-based, they get the data, but it's in a class. I said, there's no reason you can't present at Rebel Slam for that, right? So it doesn't have to be solo research outside. You might be doing something in a class. And for those of you that are just starting, like you're in year one of your program and you just want to get your feet wet and exposed, jump in. Do something like that. Either do a class project or do a if you're working on a paper with a faculty member, do that. I just think that is it too soon is the question of, is the so what there? You know, if you can tell somebody what the importance of your discussion is, then you are ready to do Rebel Slam. Hope that answers that.
So for both the, as a judge perspective and folks who've done it, how much emphasis is put on the methodologies? Because I'm in sociology, so I'm in a social science. Oftentimes we have to validate why we're using a certain method, why it matters, why it's also important. But with this, it seems to be mostly what you're researching and why it's important, not so much the methods part. So I'm just wondering how much folks emphasize their method and how they were collecting their data.
So do you guys want to go first since you presented?
Yeah. So I think that you have to ask yourself why you want to explain your method. So if it's customary in your perspective field to go in depth as to what model you use or things like that, that seems like it becomes more focal for just that field. Whereas I would probably argue if you were doing some kind of novel experiment where your method is so new and it's different and it's important, then yeah, you probably would want to talk about it. But at the end of the day, I still would ask myself that question: is this an important piece to move my story along, of getting my main point that I want to come across to my audience? Will this help me, or will it force me to add more jargon that people probably will tune out of?
Yes, I think that's a really good answer, Kendra. I do agree that if your research is more method-based, then yeah, I would definitely highlight more of the method section. Um, I know for like Kendra and I, there's a lot of methods we use. So I think in our situation, we kept a little bit more about the real life implications and just the general science. But I think I agree with Kendra. It depends on what your topic is for your research.
Because they're absolutely right. I also would follow up. I think it depends what type of presentation you're giving. So if you're doing completed research, you don't want to take too much time away from your 3 minutes to talk about your methods when it's the results and the so what that's important. If it's a research in progress and you've got some time and it's important to talk about like the novel idea of the methodology, I think that what I've seen is some students will get up there and feel like it's their proposal defense where they have to defend their methodology. That's not what this is. Like, it's not, the people in the audience don't know enough about the area to even know if you're defending it properly, because they haven't read all the lit. And that also sort of goes to how much of your lit review do you actually put on the presentation? Probably just enough to do the so what, why is it important? So whatever in your lit review, what theory or concept you're using or you're building on, talk about that. But I have a tendency to like to see it more with, think about your 5 chapters, intro, talk a little bit about maybe your main theory and maybe your methodology, and it might just be something as simple as, without supporting it, this is the method I use, and then your results. The results and the discussion piece of your dissertation or thesis. That's what I see works best for, because again, it's really hard to do a methods or a literature review without using all that lingo and all that jargon that's very specific to your field. But if you need it, if it needs to tell your story, then I think it's worth it. Again, it depends on if you're completed research or in progress.
No, I appreciate that, because I just didn't, because like Nevin, it's not like a traditional research thing. It's not the defense. So I was just afraid if it was like getting dinged for not mentioning the methods. But it's not like I'm doing anything spicy. I'm doing interviews. But it's so often you have to still say, here's why I chose to, like a defense. You have to defend your reasoning. So I was just making sure I wouldn't have to do that because I would rather not do that.
I wouldn't worry about defending any of your methods, or to be honest with you, even defending your theory. Because the audience isn't going to know enough about that theory to know if the defense makes sense.
Totally.
Again, it's the intro. Why is it important? Why am I doing it? Maybe the hypotheses, and then what did you find, and what are we going to do with it? I think, again, in 3 minutes, you want to get in there, tell them what you want to tell them, and then get out. Yeah, I don't, but I've seen that happen. I've seen students that get up there in their 3 minutes and they talk all about the method.
Yeah, I don't want to, so I'm glad I don't have to.
Yeah, it's not a defense proposal,
Right.
right? And to be honest with you, we make you go through that, not because when you go to do a journal, you're not going to probably put that in there either.
Right.
Right? It's just to make sure you know what you're doing during a defense proposal.
Yeah.
That's why we sort of make you defend it, that you know what you did was right. That's a different structure here.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for clarifying that.
Great question. So this next question we had here kind of relates to this. And someone asked, will we know who the judges in our room are beforehand in order to tailor our presentation to them? And that's kind of part of this competition, is that you don't. It could be somebody from the community working in a completely different industry than you are even going to go into. You're going to have faculty and professors that are from different fields than you are studying. And so you're not going to know, which is why part of this is tailoring it to an audience that may not know anything about your research, and just telling them why, that is important for your study.
I don't think I have ever judged a hospitality. I mean, we get we don't get a ton, as I said earlier, but I don't think I've ever judged a hospitality. And if I did, it was one. I end up sitting in a lot of hard sciences, some sociology. Yeah, and those are not my field. Like, you start talking, I'm a numbers person. I also have no business people. So you start talking like science terms and I'm like, oh, I don't even, you lost me 5 steps ago, right? But that's pretty common. Like, when I think about who's on the panel, it's a mixture of faculty from different areas, community members who may not even have a background in education. They're just supportive of the university. So yeah, you want to make sure you could talk to about it at a party of people that were not your field.
Yeah, exactly. Just like you all previously stated, something you can explain to your parents or your middle school brother or something like that as well. So our next question here is, should I memorize a script to help minimize rambling? Thoughts on that?
Okay. I think that it's in your best interest to know, or at least have an outline of what you want to say, because 3 minutes may seem like a long time, but it goes by like 60 seconds. And in order to be able to make sure that you hit every point you wanted to say, having some kind of outline is very, very helpful.
Yeah, I agree with the outline. For me personally, I think memorizing like at least like a subset or a small script, I think it's important. Just because, again, you don't have time to mess up or get delayed in any way, because if you go that extra second, you're going to get disqualified. So for me personally, I would say that having more of like a script would help.
So I'm just going to give a little bit of an offset to that. While it's very important that you know what you're going to talk about, you want to make sure that if you memorize it, if you were to stumble, because I've seen this happen too, where you stumble and you forget one section, in your mind, you now don't know where you are in the script. And so I am not a memorizer, but I'll get up in front and talk. When you know your stuff, you don't need to have a memorized script, but you need to have an outline. You need to know what points you're going to talk about. And there might be some, like if you're talking about your research question, that might be very specific where you want to memorize it, but just make sure you're not so stuck on the memorization that if you were to get, you get up there and you get flustered, that you're, because I've seen this happen too, where like 15 seconds in, they're flustered and they have to go, to get themselves back on track, they have to go back to the beginning. And then they have to repeat because it's the only way they know how to, because they've memorized. So just be careful. It's important to know what you're talking about, but just be careful if you're going to fully memorize that you know how to get yourself to the next step if you do get flustered in there, because it happens to the best of us. I mean, you can memorize all you want, but you get up there and you now are in front of 50 people that you don't know, or 40 that you don't know, and 10 that you do. You want to just make sure you can get through that memorization if you're going to use it.
Thank you. So this next question, I think I can answer. Can we have a note card for reference? So that is going to be a no. You can only use your one PowerPoint slide. There's no music, no props, no note cards, nothing like that. So our next question here is, do you have any tips for keeping the judges and the audience engaged, entertained? I think this can come from both perspectives. Do you want to start us off?
No, I just think that if your topic is, I think, again, if you're engaged, I think if you show passion for what you're talking about, we will see that, and then we get engaged. So if you just stand up there and talk like a robot, nobody's going to listen to you. But if you change your voice inflection, if they know that you're passionate about what you're doing, that's going to come through. And again, if you capture them at the beginning with the, why am I going to tell you what I'm going to tell you? And have the reason be something that the audience can connect to, they're going to stay with you.
And what kind of strategies did you both use to your audience engage?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, can you not hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just I couldn't hear you the first time.
I
Sorry.
said, you as the presenters, what kind of strategies did you use to keep your audience engaged?
Oh, okay. For me, I think it's important to have like a good slide. And for me personally, what I did was I numbered like pictures and stuff, so I can that kind of force the audience to look at like specific pictures, and that's the way or a tactic I use to like keep the audience like engaged. I also think it's important for like like moving your hands and making sure you have different tones of voice. So just a lot of different tactics to have your audience pay attention.
Yeah. Alongside that, I would say making sure that you are speaking up, you're not whispering, you're taking up space. Like they're there to hear what you have to say, so make sure that they can hear you. You're making eye contact, you seem inviting, being friendly, make it feel more like a two-way conversation. Like if they wanted to talk to you afterwards, it's really obtainable for them to do so. You want to seem personable, and that helps people want to continue to listen to what you have to say.
Can I do a follow-up, because it came from what Andrew said, and we haven't really touched on it yet, which is what your slide should look like. I think it's important that it's a balancing act with that slide. You want to have enough on there to engage your audience, but not too much to distract them. So, I mean, I've seen the extremes where one is, I don't even know how it relates to the topic, right? It's just, and then there's others where I'm spending so much time trying to figure out everything on the slide that I'm not listening to the person presenting. And so I think that slide needs to be a nice balance to engage the audience and to also help you remember like what you wanted to talk about, so like Andrew said, he numbered them, right? Or having quadrants of, maybe 4 main things you want to talk about, but you don't want them staring at the slide and not listening to you, but you also want to use the slide to your advantage.
So a follow-up to that is, as a judge, when you're judging the contestants, how much is the PowerPoint weighted relative to the verbal delivery? Like, is one more valuable? Is it kind of about the same value?
We have a rubric. I don't, there's actually on the rubric, there is a section that we grade that's just on the slide specifically. And so when I grade, That's separate. And I want to say it might be 5 out of 20.
Looking at it right now, so it's out of 24, so it's 6 out of 24.
6 out of 24. So it's 1/4 of the whole presentation is the slide. So what I do when I grade, and it's got to be different, is that's a standalone. So if you really bomb your slide, I'm not going to affect the other 3 because I'm grading. Can we tell them the categories?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, but the 4 categories are comprehension, content, engagement, and communication.
And the slide is under communication or content?
Might be under, it's under.
So it's not even all of it. So
it's under communication.
It's under communication. So it's only a part of it. So along with the slide is how are you articulating and how are you engaging with the audience? And so, but I keep it very specific. I won't, like for instance, if you have a slide that is too generic, I'm not going to ding you on content because content is what you're telling me. So yes, you need it to be important, but you can see it's only 1/4 or less than that of the entire presentation, but still very important because it can, to be honest with you, it can make or break the position that you end up in. Because if you have 2 really good presentations and one slide was better than the other, then that's going to push, because they'll get more points in that section.
It being like a static slide versus a slide that has animation.
Yes, no animations. So it's just a static slide.
Static slide, and it all has to be up when you start talking.
Yes.
So you can't do well, I guess that's called an animation in PowerPoint, but you can't build on it. So you also have to be careful that comes back to the having too much on it, because if you have a lot on it, even if you're not to that point yet, your audience and judges will start to look at the slide and not listen to you. So yeah, but it goes up there when your 3 minutes begin.
And once you go on the Rebel Grad Slam website, we have a PowerPoint template for you. So you'll just download that and you'll add your portions to that. And it'll tell you when you download the PowerPoint template exactly, like there's no animations, no music, no props. So just make sure you're following that once you're building it, because if you add any of those things, we'll have to just let you know. You can't submit this, you have to redo it. So just pay attention to that when you do download it. And also, you cannot change your slide between rounds. So if you placed during preliminary rounds and then you move on to semifinals, we use that same slide. There's nothing that can be changed on it. And same thing for finals.
And don't feel like you have to put references or citations on that slide. That is not a good use of that slide. Obviously, we know that we do that when we do proposal defenses or dissertation defenses. Don't use your space to put references or citations on that slide.
So my question just changed. I could have sworn that I read that if you put images.
You can use images, but they can't be animated images.
Yeah. Okay. I was just like, I don't think mine will have images. It seems weird, you know.
So there was a presentation a couple of years ago where her research was on the car.
Oh, Selena Ayala.
So she did the car.
She was the car one in the sociology.
Car racing.
The car scenes, yeah.
The car scenes, yes. And so her pictures were images of photographs she had taken. Absolutely acceptable because they were still photographs and there was multiple on the slide.
I'm studying parents. That's why I was like, I'm not sure. I don't have pictures of parents that I've interviewed.
But we have some that they're like cartoon. So we had one that did child autism one year, and they did pictures of that kind of went with the. So yeah, you can absolutely use images, and just as long as they're static.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's no problem.
And then if you are using images, we do ask that you put like where you got those. So like, just very small, like.
Want to make sure you have copyright.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, I thought I read, making sure.
Yeah. So you can put the reference under the image or the graphic you're using, but you can just make it very small. Just you know, it doesn't need to take up. Yeah.
And my original question, just for the interest of time, do we have to say the title of our, like, hi, I'm such and such, I'm doing this, Because, I mean,
So
it's 15 seconds that.
we're going to introduce the speaker. So we'll
Got
say next up is Teresa, she's going to be presenting on. And then once we move to, so that first slide is a cover slide while we're introducing you. And
Okay,
then you move on. Once we click next and it goes up to your slide, then the timer starts.
okay, awesome. That's what I was wondering. Just,
You should still introduce yourself.
okay,
Maybe not but there's gonna be a slide, like she said, there's gonna be an intro slide, which has your name and the title of your presentation. But I wouldn't just go in there and go, oh, like, say, welcome, or, I mean, I would have some sort of, it goes back to that engagement. Right. Connecting with the audience. But no, I don't think you have to go, but I don't know what you guys did. If you did, I mean, you could probably get it done in 5-10 seconds. Andrew and Andrew, did you have like an intro?
I didn't do an intro last year, but now that you said that, I do think that it's important actually now, like just to kind of like engage, make your audience feel like more comfortable. Just if you start off too, factual in the beginning, it might throw the audience off a little bit. So I do agree that I think it maybe just take like 5 to 10 seconds max to kind of ease your way into it.
Yeah, I would agree. I kind of go by that hourglass kind of concept where it's like you start off broad and bring everyone in, and then you get really focal on what your story is, and then kind of end broad again for like major implications. That usually helps me.
Something else I've seen is, I've seen people that start with a question, right? And because then it gets the audience thinking, right? So, that's, and that would be one way that you could sort of, but I think there should be an intro for at least you. Again, you may not have to give your name again, but something to engage that audience to grab them.
thank you.
So Tony, you've been judging for several years now. So you've seen this in person and completely virtual. And this year it's going to be both in person and virtual. Are there any main differences you've seen in like presentation style or strategies they've used to keep you engaged? Was there a difference between the virtual versus the in-person?
Yeah, I think the in-person is more engaging. And I think that's just because of the presenters. I think that you guys feel more comfortable when you're able to stand up there and move around a little bit and not be in a box, right? And I found that in the box, in the virtual, it felt more rehearsed and more, I knew they weren't using notes, but it felt more like that, where in person, they weren't standing behind the podium. They were walking around a little bit and they could engage. It's really hard to engage with somebody virtually, like, especially when, like, we look right now, we only have 3 boxes that have cameras on, right? And so I don't know what the policy is going to be this year. I think the judges are usually pretty good about having that on. Something I would maybe recommend is get a friend in there the day that you're presenting and have them put their camera on. I would say the same thing if you're live. Get some friends in that audience that you can connect with to give you that comfort level of, okay, I'm just going to look at that person and make sure that, and I would do that in a box or, live, but in a box it's a little bit harder because you can see right now that there's a lot that aren't. And I taught an asynchronous class in the spring, and I literally looked at 25 boxes for an hour and 15 minutes a day because I didn't require cameras on. And it's very hard to get their engagement because sometimes you might tweak what you're going to say. Like if you're live and you use a word, and everybody just looks blank, you might know right away, okay, let me spend 3 to 5 seconds to clarify this. So I'm going to come up my script a little bit. It's hard to see that in the virtual world. I also feel less connected in the virtual world. As a judge, doesn't affect necessarily the grading, but I just feel that people are more reserved in virtual than they are live.
Andrew and Kendra, did you, I know you both presented last year and that was during the virtual time. Have you presented in previous years in person?
Yes.
No. Last year was my first time.
do you have any, I guess, tips or advice for either platform, or, kind of talk on a little bit on the differences of what your experience was?
Of course, there definitely is a difference in the virtual platform. I do agree that it is harder to connect with your audience, primarily because you can't really see them. You spend more time trying to make eye contact with the camera itself to make it feel like you're looking into someone's eyes, which is also something you are going to be thinking about while you're talking. Whereas in person, it's easy to be able to come across as more personable because you are moving back and forth. You can gauge the vibe of the room. And overall, I think that I prefer in person, but virtual, it still can be done. You can still reach people and get your story across either way. I think that it's just it just feels different. I don't know how to articulate that, what that difference is. It's a little colder. Um, People seem more robotic as they presented their data in the virtual platform than they did in person. That's what I would say.
Anyone
Yeah.
else have any questions? Oh, go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just gonna say that, yeah, last year was my first time doing the Rebel Grad Slam, and I would agree with Kendra that, I'm used to moving around and pointing at PowerPoints and, just hand gestures, and it makes you feel more comfortable and more engaged with the audience. But definitely, like Kendra said, it felt a little bit more cold or more robotic, in the virtual, but, I think, yeah, it's still possible.
And I want to follow up. There's nothing that says you have to be sitting when you're doing this, even virtual. So if you have a look, obviously you can't move because the camera's not going to move with you. But if you have a standing desk where you could get the camera somewhere where you could stand, because I think that we're more open if we're standing. Our bodies are open more. So if you wanted to put the camera in a place, you gotta. If you're like me, I walk everywhere. So if you put a camera, it'd be very hard for me to stay in that box. But if you could train yourself during your practice to stay within that box, but have that looseness of standing, I think that might at least make you feel more comfortable. It might be something to try. You might try it and go, nope, I'm going back to sitting down. I'm good.
Know the schedule for when a day and time we're supposed to present.
So, good question. So registration is due October 14th. So it'll take our team about probably the following week to sort it out. We typically get about 100 participants. So going through everyone's schedules and all that. So it'll be probably that following week that we'll send everyone their emails. And then after the typically we do this all in 1 week. So it's like prelims, semis, finals. So usually you find out that Wednesday what your schedule is going to be next day, because but now this time it's going to be the following week, so we'll have some time. We'll get a couple of days before your prelims and your semis, but then semis you're going to know the day for finals. Which finals is going to be 4 to 5. That set is just like the order you're going in is what you'll figure out the day before. Questions? Well, if nobody has any more questions, I'm just gonna open it up to our panel to give any last words of advice or wisdom for our new participants. So whoever wants to get us started on that. Yep.
I would say just be confident. Confidence goes a long way, and just be yourself, have fun, and this whole entire thing is just to help you grow professionally. It's more than just a competition, but have fun.
Yeah, I agree. Have fun, have confidence, and just make sure that you leave where your audience is interested in your research. And again, just keep reinforcing the idea of making sure that you're highlighting why should your audience be interested in this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the have fun. We do too much in our fields that is graded, or we are either you're being graded or you're being, somebody signing off on your, that is not this. This is a fun way for you to talk about what you do and why you're passionate about it. And yeah, I just think that if you just come in with that perspective, we want to see your passion and your fun. Don't stress about this. This is a fun way to talk about why you do what you do.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Andrew, Kendra, and Tony for joining us today and sharing your experience and sharing your advice with us. And thank you all for joining us for today's workshop. See you at the next one. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, guys.